I mean, this is an existing home that's been renovated, just had some minor interior renovations, and so in that way, I guess it's green. We reused what we've had. Um, in many ways, though, it's just a standard home. I mean, this home didn't have any insulation in the walls when I moved in. Um, I'll be getting to the windows this year, but I mean, it basically just has they don't even function as true double pane windows in the downstairs. So
Okay.
there are a lot of things which are old fashioned about it and which aren't very green. I guess in terms of what I would think of a green, I guess green approaches to me would be ones that are sustainable. So you're really looking at I mean, you can look at carbon footprint or carbon greenhouse gas emissions and see, well, what is the cost of the technology in terms of the carbon footprint? I mean, the unit downstairs, obviously, there's a new water tank and the panel and the energy pack is what they call the unit attached to the water heater. It's all full of steel and electronics and metals, and so yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what the analysis is, how long does it take for that benefit to get paid off compared to using natural gas to heat my water, which natural gas is pretty pretty clean, and so is that the right decision? I don't know. I mean, I think the green aspects of the house are trying to insulate it. I mean, I had the walls insulated. The attic is not completely finished, but there'll be fairly high level of insulation in there. I'll try to get the basement insulated and maybe even do part of the floor. That's kind of why the basement's such a dump down there, is that I have been debating about digging up the rest of the floor. But in terms of whether or not it's green, I mean, I think you can get green devices which maybe look good from a marketing standpoint and sell well, but are they? I mean, I didn't point it out down there, but I have a wastewater heat recovery apparatus, and it's not maybe quite as sexy as the solar hot water panel, but it's very simple and very effective, and so it's essentially just grabbing. It just works really on the bathroom piping, but it's grabbing the wastewater, the heat out of the wastewater when we have a shower, and so that's a very effective device. It's very simple, and so I think part of the issue is, well, what lengths are you going to go to achieve those green benefits, and is it sustainable to do so? Is it more sustainable to achieve a lower bar, a lower level of energy efficiency of lower greenhouse gases, or depending whatever measure you want to use. I wouldn't really call our house a greenhouse. It's just we've got a few green, devices. I mean, I've got the on-demand water heater, the solar hot water. So in terms of hot water, it's very green, but it's a significant cost, which is really not justified. And given the difficulty I've had getting the unit serviced, I don't think I'd go for the solar hot water panel again. I think I'd probably do something like a better quality insulation in the walls, and try to do that, or better windows or something like that. Well, I guess, the thing aside, I mean, there was the Eco Action Program, and so I had to do some renovations to the house, and so I forget how it all started. I mean, I did wiring, I rewired the house, replumbed the house, and in combination with those projects, I had to dig up the floor, I had to open up a lot of the walls, and so it was an opportunity to do a lot of work. And so with those projects came the Eco Action Program. So it was the insulating the walls. That's how it happened. Yeah. So I knew I had to insulate the walls. The furnace just ran all the time in the winter time. I had I think a mid-efficiency furnace at the time, but the way the incentives works is once you make that leap, you have to do everything within 18 months, and so I didn't actually get everything finished, unfortunately. But I think I was interested in a lot of these technologies or devices. I think I have an interest in trying to make the house as energy efficient as I can. I think maybe some of it is slightly hobby interest. I mean, a lot of them are not if you do a cost benefit, there is no benefit. There is no benefit in terms of cost recovery. Obviously, there are cost savings. I mean, my gas bill went down a huge amount, but I did install a new furnace, which was much more efficient. I had an on-demand water heater, and all the hot water stuff is very, very efficient now. So it partly out of interest, I think, partly out of the program that once I was in, if I wanted to do any of these things, I had to do them all at once. And there were the rebates with the solar hot water panel. There were the 2 rebates at the same time, which made it relatively affordable. I think it was around $3,000. So it was, if I wanted to do it, that would have been the time. It just wasn't really feasible to do it at any other time. So I think that's kind of the 2 factors. Kind of the just general interest in energy efficiency, interested in solar technologies, and that Eco Action program. There were some surprises with the electrical and the plumbing, but I think it's just the ability to anticipate how the job's going to unfold and understand how everything is going to work and try to do a good job. I think was perhaps one of the bigger difficulties. There were some relatively minor details, but still, in order to make things look pretty or nice, it would have been nice to have known exactly. You almost have to go through it a couple of times in order to do a better job. And obviously, each time I was doing things, it was the first time. My on-demand heater is on the wrong wall. I need it on another wall. So,
Okay.
I needed to. I didn't figure everything out at that time, but I needed to. I needed to remove a window and fill in part of the wall in order to get it on the right wall, and so that was a mistake. The electrical, when I was doing it, there was just, I'd find in the ceiling here, there were just some cords put together with just a bit of 2 wires connected with a bit of electrical tape. That was a surprise. There were just some minor finishing details that the guys didn't do a very good job on with the solar panel, which could have been done better. I think depending on each of the different actions had a different experience. I mean, the solar hot water panel, obviously that was something that at the time there were incentives for and was relatively attractive. I would advise people to think fairly carefully about investing in programs where there's current government incentives and whether or not there are enough service providers to repair and fix the equipment. Are the companies going to be around long enough to provide parts? Those are definitely concerns with the solar hot water. I think a lot of them are cost savings. Sometimes it can seem like a bit of fun to do some of these projects, but I think sometimes it's good to ask hard questions. Well, what are the benefits in terms of cost recovery? How green is the particular technology? What are is there another way to achieve the benefit more simply and in a less costly manner? I think those are some of the questions that I would be tending to ask people. It can be pretty once one's in a renovation project. I found that there's a certain momentum that gets established, and it's pretty difficult to. It's part of a ride, it's a bit of a roller coaster, and so with my experience was that I'm not sure the judgment was always perfect on every decision. But in terms of the insulation in the walls, that was just basic cellulose. There were tons of people who do that. It's very simple and very effective. And so in houses like this house dates from the 1940s, and so it was, a very good decision. Good decision. How effective is the insulation? I think it's just average. There are a lot of the foam technologies. There was a concrete foam. What do they call it? I think. Some sort of concrete foam technology that was fairly new that would have been interesting to try because it doesn't burn, and there have been a few fires in this neighborhood, so that would have been, I'm sure the greenhouse gas footprint or the carbon footprint probably would have been much higher on that, but it would have been much higher insulation value and much more, would have sealed a lot of the leaks, so that would have been interesting to do. The heat recovery apparatus, I think those are very good. they're very effective and simple, and so those, I think, a lot of people could install them themselves. And so that's something I think I probably would recommend people to do. The price of copper affects it. Obviously, it's made entirely of copper. Have been some thefts of copper, so depending on the price of copper in the long term, could affect whether the desirability of that. What are the other things they've done? The on-demand hot water heater is, again, it's one of those borderline technologies. For me, I think it's very expensive. There are a few service providers. I don't have a good service provider for my particular brand, but I think it just drove me nuts having just a plain Jane gas hot water heater, just heating the water all the time. The pilot flame is always on, and then there's in order to prevent bacterial growth in the tank, it's got to keep that tank warm all the time. And I just found that I'm not sure obnoxious, but just it wasn't an attractive concept. Yeah. And so, despite the extra cost, that was something I went for, and I had a high efficiency furnace installed as well, and so that meant I didn't need my chimney anymore, and so that was relatively attractive to get away from that chimney. I'd have to repair the chimney once, and so if I need any more chimney repairs, I can just remove it now. My neighbor will need it. So those sorts of decisions sometimes can come into it where you can save yourself future maintenance. I think those are some of the key, I think, decisions. It's just important to important to ask hard questions and whether or not it's really worth it, and whether or not it's worth it elsewhere. I think some of the models for some of the the photovoltaic panels and the solar hot water panels are interesting, where you buy a share in it and then somebody else installs it somewhere else, and you get something. They're paying for the energy use, and you're getting it's like you're being a small utility in a way, and in some ways that pays a dividend or a bond. It's like a bit like a bond, and you're getting that revenue stream. You don't have to you're installing it somewhere where there's an assured demand. I've heard about it in Toronto. There's one company, they install them on laundromats. So that's a great spot. They need hot water all the time. It's obviously variable according to the laundromat when they need their hot water, but that's a really effective use of that technology. And so I think some of those approaches are interesting. Obviously, in an urban environment, is somebody going to build a tall building next to the site where you have it and put it completely in the shade? And so that one of the rebates I got for this was through I forget the exact name, but it's the Ottawa Sustainable or Renewable Energy Co-op. And so they were good. I think they were very effective in organizing that rebate program. And those sorts of organizations, I think, that could do that. But obviously, there's some certain changes to urban planning and zoning which would be effective. So if you're installing something for 20 or 30 years, it's going to be in the right place. But I'm convinced that they're good technologies. They just need to be installed in the proper places, and the average person perhaps doesn't need this. I think it goes back to maybe more community based approaches of viewing heating and cooling, and maybe there's people often talk about cogen, and so do we need, when we're building new communities, do we need to be installing cogen systems so that maybe a few of these houses have them and they're heating the community hall, or so everyone, they're installed on a general basis and people can take advantage of them. So those are, I think, the questions where I think it leads you. The benefits to one family, I don't think it really provides a huge benefit to the rest of the community or the rest of society. But if you approach these sorts of how do you heat and cool all your buildings and all your water in summer and winter, then I think you can kind of get to some interesting solutions. And some of these technologies on a larger scale would have a lot bigger benefits, and I think maybe through collective action that they could you could get some real change, and we'd be able to reduce our use of fossil fuels. And I think on a larger scale, it's easier to get the expertise. You can get, if municipalities or communities get together, then you can get people who can manage them, who have the technical expertise, and are able to to get the level of scale where the service providers, it's worth their while to maintain the systems and keep an eye on them. But from my point of view, it's just another expensive piece of equipment that I have to maintain now, and it's hard to find people to do it. And it's a bit like, at least with a furnace, it's easy to get people. There's tons of people who can maintain a furnace, but when you get into the more specialized technologies, it's a bit of a burden on an individual homeowner to have to do that. It was the outlay cost. I mean, I paid for all of it, and then I got I think 2 or 3 rebates for it. So I mean, it was $3,000, I believe, roughly what I paid. You know, at the end of the day, what my cost was. You know, that's I guess that's is it money well spent? Perhaps not. You know, it could have paid for other things, but once you're in the house renovations cycle, $1,000 doesn't seem that much. Everything seems to cost a lot of money, and so you know, there have been some pretty significant savings on I guess reductions in fuel costs. I mean, at the same time, the price of natural gas has really gone through the bottom. Gone through the floor, because it's at the same time it's where a lot of the shale deposits have been discovered, and so price of gas is not that expensive anymore. So there has been that saving. I guess the financial impact has been, other than the cost of the system, is relatively minor. It's a small saving. Was it a wise use of money? I don't know. I don't think the money issue is the one that would make me reconsider. It's more just the difficulty in getting the system serviced and getting it maintained. I think that is the flag, and the fact that perhaps I don't think my site is the ideal site. I've got it in the garage. I've just got 1 panel. Normal installation is 2. I don't get the morning sun, so I mean, during it's you know, the summer solstice, the sun is up at 5:15, and it's not really until 8:30 that the panel, 8:30, 8:45, that the panel gets full sun. So, I think those sorts of ideas that just really, my site is not ideal. I just get one panel, and the overall benefit, for 2 months of the year, I get some really great hot water. 4 months of the year, it works okay, and then there's another, 6 or 5 months a year where it does something, but it's not really a significant benefit to hot water. So I think the financial impact is something is an obstacle that prevents people from getting into these new technologies. I guess the incentive, it's very attractive at the time of purchase, and so it's one of these decisions that I had to make. I think again, I don't think I would do it again. I think that perhaps the money would have maybe been better spent on, as I say, on the insulation. My neighbor redid their house at roughly the same time or a little earlier than I did, and so they did do the insulation on the walls and the foam type, and so I think it would have been maybe better spent there, or on the windows, some of those big ticket items. But it's an interesting experience anyway at the same time. I think I said more than I thought I had to say, but I think sometimes just with green homes or sustainable homes, it's just what is the benefit for the effort and the cost and the level of technology, the uncertainty that some of those technologies have in terms of whether they're well tested, they're proven, are they adapted to our climate? Is our climate the ideal one for these? I mean, obviously a system like this would work much better in Alabama or the mid-US than it does here. I have been to Australia and been to a small hotel or resort that's, I believe, completely off the grid, and there they were at 14 degrees south, and so it was perfect latitude for solar PV. I mean, here we're at 45 north, and I think those are some of the questions. Is again, but getting back to perhaps spending the money in areas where they are much more efficient, and for solar use for southern areas, and is there a way for people to invest in these and get the benefits, but not exactly have to have them on their own property? I think those are some of the general considerations that maybe as we go forward, does each individual homeowner have to do it on their own? Yeah.